Hi guys, welcome to my talk about scaling financial products on the XRPL for seamless user experience. My name is Koen Paas and I'm a developer for XRPL Labs. What's very important on the XRPL is, I would say right now, having lightning fast development. If you want to scale something, you don't know if it's going to work out your ID, for example. So I've got a little bit of a process which I use, and which might be useful for other people as well. I use this, keep it simple. First, you need to have a great idea, of course. Then I will do some research. I'll go into these points a little bit later in depth. And also, after that, we'll talk a little bit about the design and framework and where and how to build your XApp. Fix and improve for first testing. If you have an app, of course, you need to go back to what you first built. You need to improve a little bit because you cannot build it the right way at once. You're going to come across some points during the development where you need to improve or you're going to learn a lot. And the goal is to release an MVP as soon as possible and to get reactions from real use cases and real users so you can improve upon it. So the idea in becoming creative, actually from neuroscience, I've done a little bit of research when I made this presentation, and it used to be that creative is being original. Nowadays, they tend to disagree, and they're actually trying to come up with a definition where it's more of a problem-solving thing, where you solve a problem. That is now more in the neuroscience. That is called creative. And how you would do this, some people say they're not really creative or they cannot come up with great ideas. Actually, study shows that's not true. Because you can actually put in the work and work on being creative. For example, you can do brainstorm sessions. You can improve upon that, on how to come up with ideas, but also let your mind wander, because what happens is that you rationalize too much and you do not like the idea, for example. But this might not be the case for users, so it actually might have been a great idea. And that's why you can practice remote associations, go outside, just go for a walk, and you come up with great ideas. For example, that's why the shower is also a great idea to actually come up with great ideas. And thereafter, you have to kind of revisit your ideas as well to make sure what you've come up with and craft a little bit. Then I would say after you have an idea you've come up with, your aha moment, you do a little bit of research first. Research the market. Get to know your audience, what you want to build for, and your competitors. Do you already have some? Because later on you will see, I want to really familiarize my apps that I built for others. So what they're using, it comes across familiar to other apps they've been using before. Because in the XRPL, you can actually build things, but you can make it really complicated in your user interface, for example. But the thing is, you want to make sure it's very familiar to other users that have never used that app before or have never interacted with the XRP ledger. And also the feasibility analysis, you need to make sure it's legal and technically possible. And this is something you have to go through documentation or actually consult a lawyer, for example. You cannot just start a casino. You need to have the proper permits. So the design, I'm not a designer myself. We have great designers at our team. But to show a little bit how that works, we first create some sort of a concept, sketching with a technical flow. This can be on a piece of paper if you're a developer. Just sketch it out how you want it to look. And thereafter, you're going to kind of create a mock-up. So now you're going to build your app without actually building it, but make it very simple, so then you can go back and refer to what you've done in your wireframing, prototyping, your feedback, or that's basically it. And building. Then when you have your mockup, you go into the building phase. And when you're trying to build your app, I want to make sure, like I mentioned it before, familiarize the work you're doing, so make sure the users can be familiar, and also simplify it. So I have an example here with multi-sign, where I have created a mock-up, a very basic mock-up, where it kind of shows the components I need. Of course, this is just the one screen, but it shows you it's very basic. It looks very ugly, and you can just use that one to actually create something. And I found a screenshot from a while back where you can actually see to come that design a little bit to fruition. But this is not a great design. This is just making it functional and creating everything as soon as possible to make sure what you're building, if that's actually feasible. And then on the right, you see there's a lot of changes, but they're very subtle if you look very closely. And now you can call it more of a feasible product. I would say when you go into your building phase and test phase, of course, we're going to recommend you doing this on Zaman, because you will have a lot of eyeballs in the XApp list, where if you have already, for example, a web app, you can convert it and make sure it's suitable for mobile, and you can create an XApp where you can attract a lot of users. So for the building phase, that's what I would really recommend you doing if you're building on the XRPL, to make sure you get good user feedback and you get as lot of users testing it as possible, and to see if your ID actually would work. So for example, a good way of doing this is using the XApp builder. So now about the MVP. This is the most important thing, to get to that point as soon as possible. Make sure it's very simple, it's free from major bugs, so people can actually test it, and it's secure. You have the minimum required features, so that means you're not gonna, for example, in a trading interface, you're gonna do a fancy charge or anything. Just make sure you can do a trade, and make sure you can do the minimum basic requirements for every user that would need to do a trade. So you actually know that your app is technically working. So that's why you want to target and launch for early adopters, and not for users that would be your end users, perhaps. That's where you're going to get feedback, reactions, and try to improve your app. So if you see here, on the right side, you would see the first screen, which I would consider an MVP, where it's very basic. It perhaps isn't the most stylish, but the order book works, everything works, you can do a trade. But on the left side, where you see the app has improved a lot of work has gone into it, but now with the MVP, we knew that when we tested this, we got a lot of user reactions. With feature requests and everything, we knew we were kind of onto something, and this became, inside our app, the most used XApp. So that's why it's very important to get this out, see if it's working, and then improve upon, and you can consider that it's worth your time spending on building like a proper decentralized exchange interface. So now you have done your MVP. Actually, you need to consider what your success is. Because if you create something like an app, there could be different reasons on how you define your success. You could say, I want the most eyeballs on my app, like a user count, where you just open the app, but users just have the eyeballs on your app. But some consider the transaction volumes more important than the user count, where you could say you have a low user count, but the transaction volume is very high. But also what could be very important for you is that you're viable and you're generating some revenue, and which is actually great, because I see the XRPL is developing in such a way where there is amendments coming in, where, for example, XLS 56D, where you could charge a UI fee, but even better, there's one more thing for us. Zaman is introducing a revenue share within the near future, where if you build on our platform, we can actually share a percentage or a small fee that we charge the users towards your application, so you actually can become self-sufficient and viable yourself as well. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you very much.